All right, live from Salt Lake City, this is Heart of the Matter, where we do all we can to worship God in spirit and truth. I have the honor to sit here with Ryan McKnight. We're going to get right into the show. Just sitting here, you guys know, well, let's just talk. Ryan McKnight, I've heard your name in big letters.
Oh.
No, truly, I'm not blowing smoke up your shorts. In big letters, but I've benefited from your research and things, but I do not know anything about your person.
Yeah.
I don't know about your Mormonism, your walking from it, your beliefs, what makes you angry, how you started, everything you've started, what you do. So that's what we're here to do.
We're here to remedy that.
We want to remedy and hear all about you, really, from your mouth. Okay. You know, in this day and age, if I looked you up, I'm sure I would get some stuff that's not true.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, and so why would I want to read that?
You know, before I was, somewhat well known by a certain small group of people, like I am now, you would always hear, don't believe everything you read on the internet and this and that. It's kind of hard to understand that, but even from maybe some reputable sources, but I have learned that it's very true. Yeah. While some things will have a flavor of the truth, there's a lot of twisted and misinformation and, people, when I go to some events and people will meet me for the first time and they think they know me from my public persona. Yeah. And it's obvious that in many cases that they don't actually know me the way they think they do.
So help us get to know Ryan McKnight. Let's start off, I was born.
I was born in, I always say Las Vegas, but technically Henderson, Nevada.
Okay.
I was born 1981, if you want a year.
Wow.
So for some people, I'm super young, and for some people, I'm a little old. Huh. My kids say I'm old, and I'm 38 years old.
You're young.
Young. I feel young.
Yeah.
I do feel young. Yeah. So,
Henderson, was it developed and beautiful like it is now?
Well, no. I mean, I usually joke and say that I remember when you used to have to drive from Las Vegas to Henderson.
Oh, well.
But there was actually land in between the two. Now it's there's literally a street, and on one side of the street the address is Las Vegas, and on the other side it's Henderson.
Wow.
So it has definitely grown. Now, I didn't really live in Las Vegas until I was an adult. Okay. My parents moved from Las Vegas when I was, I believe, around 6 months. And ever since then, I moved every 2 years, with the exception of one place that I lived for 3 years. And Las Vegas was usually our summer location. So I spent a lot of summers there. I grew up a lot overseas, and so my exposure to Boy Scouts, church Boy Scouts, was in the summer in Las Vegas, whereas I'd go back home to whatever country I was in, and I was in a local Boy Scout troop that had nothing to do with Mormonism, if you will, so stuff like that. But Las Vegas was our home base. My parents were both raised there, and I moved back permanently. I've been there, going on 16 and a half years, shortly after my mission, right before I got married. Basically, I moved to Las Vegas and have not left since. I've lived all over the world, all over the United States, and I have never felt at home the way I do in Las Vegas. Wow. That's my home.
Is it military? Was Dad military?
No, my dad, he's retired now, but he was with the CIA.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean,
this is getting more interesting as we go.
No, it's not that interesting.
Did you know that? Did you know that?
I didn't know until I was 16.
Huh.
He took me for a drive.
You got the drive, son.
Well, I'll tell you. Well, if you want a little, I've never told this story in public, actually.
Yes.
So I guess now that you're bringing it up, I'll tell you the story of how I found out. Huh. Okay, so when we would move from country to country, occasionally, I don't remember if it was every time we moved from a different country or just sometimes. But on this one particular time, we were moving from Honduras to Guatemala. And normally we would spend the summer in Las Vegas. Family, we'd come up to Salt Lake and visit friends and blah, blah, whatever, summer vacation. And this particular time, before going to Las Vegas, we went to Northern Virginia, where I had lived when I was a kid previously. when I had lived when I was maybe in 4th, 5th grade. And now I'm going into my junior year in high school at this point, 16-ish. And so we're in Manassas, Virginia, and I was under the impression, and this is what it was. We were there, my dad was taking care of some stuff at work, which I did not know. I thought it was just like the State Department was what we were told. And then we were there to get our shot, like we'd have to get shots, and like I had to get tested for AIDS and stuff like that. Like that was just standard protocol. I had to get tested and shot for everything being overseas. So we're there for a couple weeks staying in a hotel, and I'm spending my time, because we used to live in Manassas, hanging out with my friends from several years prior, riding bikes with this friend, going over and playing video games with this other friend. And so one day I come back to the hotel and my dad says, you're going with me to work tomorrow. And I'm like, I have plans with my friends and I don't want to do this. And I don't care, you're going. I'm all upset. We get in the car and I'm just like, why do I have to do this? And I remember he took me to the bookstore because I used to read. I was a voracious reader as a kid, and he took me in the Jurassic Park, second Jurassic Park had just come out, and I wanted to read the book before I saw the movie, and we stopped and bought that book so I could read while I'm twiddling my thumbs as he's working for some reason. So anyway, so we're in the car, we're driving, and he says, he goes, well, I'm bringing you with me for a reason today. And I'm the oldest, by the way, of all my siblings. So I'm the oldest kid. He says, your mom and I, I've got something I need to tell you. Your mom and I think you're old enough for this now. And I'm like starting to this is me in the car. I'm like, what is this? He's like, your grandparents know about it and your aunts and uncles know about it, but that's pretty much it, what I'm about to tell you. And you can't tell anybody. Okay. No idea.
Wow.
He goes, do you ever wonder, this is what he says to me, do you ever wonder why I work at night so often? And I'm like, I assumed everybody's dad worked at night every once in a while. I didn't realize that was an anomaly. I wasn't paying that much attention. Yeah. He said something else along those lines. He goes, well, I work for the CIA. And I was like, what? Okay, and works in clandestine operations, and he's like, you can't tell anybody. You have to tell people. You think I work at the State Department, right? For the State Department, he's a diplomat in these countries dealing with whatever political relations. I think that I don't even remember exactly what his cover was at the time, but it was something along the lines that he worked for the State Department. Okay, and I did go to work with him that day to Langley. And he had, I guess, arranged for me to be able to get in. And the first thing we did was he drove me around the parking lot, which they have these monuments around the parking lot of all these sort of historical artifacts that are related to the CIA. The only one I remember is they have a piece of the Berlin Wall. Wow. Because, the CIA, I guess, apparently was involved in getting that down. So there's like an actual section of the wall all graffitied up. Wow. And it's like stood up in the parking lot as a monument. So we walked in, that entrance that you see on TV where they show the seal, right? That's like a real thing. Wow. There's some stars that you will sometimes see in the movies, these gold stars when you walk in, they're to the right. And in some of the movies you can kind of see them on the wall. And my dad took me over to those. And there's these nondescript gold stars with nothing else. There's no wording or anything. And they represent, I never knew this until then, they represent everybody who was killed, every CIA person who was killed in the line of duty, essentially. Wow. And I remember my dad telling me that in some of the cases, even very, very few people, even at the CIA, even know who the star represents, because some of the cases were so sort of top secret. But anyway, I got like a tour of whatever I was allowed to go in the building. I'm sure there were places I wasn't allowed to go. And then I ended up they had kind of a library there. And, where all these fact books, I don't know if you know this, but some people know this. The CIA is actually one of the best curators of world facts. Like they have these fact books that they publish. No idea. You can actually go online and read them. What? It's like public information. But they just basically anything and everything about a country. you know. And so I went and read some of these books about countries and whatever, while my dad went off and had some meeting or whatever, and then we went home. And, you know, it was really weird because, you know, at the time, it's kind of an exciting thing at the time. At this point, I mean, look, I recognize that when I tell somebody like you say, oh, that's exciting. But for me, it's like, it's what I lived. And so I don't really necessarily see this excitement that other people see. But at the time, because it was still fresh for me, there was that. And I wanted to tell people. And it was really hard. And then one of my friends in Guatemala, which was where we were headed to, one of my friends who was in my grade at the school, his dad was my dad's boss. And so that fact alone allows me to know that he's part of the CIA. You know, they worked at the embassy, but you know, you don't know who's with the CIA and who's not, but oh, he's my dad's boss, obviously. And so I had my friend, and he knew that my dad worked for him. So we both knew our dads, and we both knew we weren't allowed to talk about it. But we would have, you know, we never talked about it, but there was like this non-verbal understanding that our dads had that in common. It's really weird. I don't know how to describe that. But we would look at each other and we would know that we have this secret that we can't tell anybody.
Were you proud of him?
I mean, I'm not.
As a kid?
I never thought of it in those terms.
You didn't think of it that way?
No. It wasn't like that for me because it was normal life. Like even up to that point, I had already lived several years, 5 years or so in South and Central America in this diplomatic lifestyle, my dad working at the embassy and having certain access to things like that a lot of people don't have access to. And so, I mean, I never saw it like that, to be honest with you. And because he never talks about his work, I don't really know. I mean, I know only a few things of what he's done. I really don't know. Maybe one day the stories get told. I don't know. But so I guess I just don't know enough about what he did. Now, I'll tell you an interesting thing that this caused a problem for me while I was on my mission.
Oh.
Because, and I was on my mission, and my parents, while I was on my mission, they were living in Peru when I left on my mission. But sometime during my mission, they moved back to Virginia. And my dad was actually, initially he was working at Langley, and then within a short period of time, in fact, I'm trying to remember now. No, this was after my mission. He went to their training facility. He was an instructor. But, so he was working at Langley, okay? And when you're on your mission, especially foreign, which I was in Spain, everybody wants to know what your parents do. They're fascinated by this, And of course, I would just simply say, like nothing. I would say, oh, my dad works for the State Department. Oh, okay, well, what is that? Oh, you mean like the Pentagon? I was like, yeah, that's it. Oh, well, where do your parents live? Oh, Virginia. Okay, your dad works at the Pentagon. Okay, yeah, whatever. Sure. No big deal, move on, right? And it really would never go beyond that, by the way. And they'd say, oh, that's cool, that sounds exciting, okay. Maybe I'd tell them about living overseas. Well, what happened during my mission? 9/11. Wow. And the Pentagon was one of the targets.
Wow.
And I had people calling me, is your dad okay? And I know that my dad does not work at the Pentagon. Do you see this problem? And I remember specifically there was a member in the ward that I was in who said, did you call your parents to make sure they're okay? And I said, nah, I'm sure they're fine. Like, I would just kind of try to, I never liked to talk about, because at the time he was still in. Like, I could only tell this stuff like after he retired, like 2011. So I just would try to, I would just say, oh no, I heard, I got word that he wasn't there that day or something, whatever I said. And I would try to just move the conversation on. But I remember there was this one board member who was like, did you call your parents to make sure that they're okay? And I said, no, I'm sure they're fine. He's like, no, you need to call them. Your dad, and I don't remember how I handled it, but it created this little conundrum for me where I'm sitting here lying to people, and of course it opens up this whole thing of, is that a justified lie?
Right.
And, it was weird. It was weird.
Mom and dad, LDS?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sisters, siblings, brothers?
Some are in, some are out. Yeah, mixed bag.
So you were raised in the church?
Yeah.
And
So, church
wherever
every
you
Sunday.
went?
Not
Peru?
only that, but when we were on vacation, we would always seek out the local chapel and at least go to sacrament meeting. So we were that devoted. I mean, I think, there were things, how Mormons have these culture, some Mormons never drink Coke. Right. Some Mormons have a hard rule on rated R. Some of them, if the parents screen it first, right? So there were quirks like that.
Yeah.
Like we would watch football on Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay. Coke was not forbidden in my house. Right. So things like that. But in most Mormon things, we were very orthodox.
Got it. I understand that.
We were not Utah Mormons.
Right.
We were not Utah Mormons. We
Very
were
different.
mission field Mormons or whatever. Although I didn't even know that term back then. But
Yeah.
I was always, basically my entire life, and especially my formative years, I was a religious minority in my schools. And when I was in South America, I was also a racial minority in most of the cases.
It made you tougher?
I think in some ways, yeah. I think I've had life experiences that other people have not had. Yeah.
Were you sold out to the LDS story, Smith, the plates?
100%. Not only that, but my testimony was rooted and solidified by the places I lived, especially Honduras and Guatemala.
Whoa.
We were taught on a regular basis, I would even go as far as to say weekly, we were reminded that we were walking the grounds of the Lamanites and Nephites, and I felt blessed for that. I felt that I was so lucky. I remember being on my mission and saying, how lucky was I that I got to walk the lands that these people walked. And in the time, like we would go, every time my dad had a 3-day weekend, with a holiday, whatever, we would always take advantage and go places and see. So I've been to all the Mayan ruins and all that areas and stuff, and I loved it because I truly, truly believed that these were the descendants of the Lamanites. And one of the biggest Book of Mormon tours in those days, this would have been mid to late 90s, one of the guys, I can't remember his first name, but last name is Allen. People that follow this stuff will know who he is. He was a big guy at farms. And I believe he's dead at this point, because he was an old man back then. And he led one of the most popular Book of Mormon tours at the time.
I think I remember those.
Yeah, and so let me just rewind 1 second. When you live in these countries as an American, the church, the way the church sets it up, this is not a rule. You can go to whatever ward is by your house, but the church has it set up there where they've designated a particular chapel and ward, usually where there's a lot of Americans living nearby, and all the Americans go to that ward. And the ward is in Spanish and everything, but the Americans are there. And if there's enough, you can have, there were some times where we had Sunday school in English, because maybe there was 6 or 7 months where there were enough Americans that, to have a full-blown class. But we were church in Spanish, but all the Americans in the entire city, even if it was a 30-minute drive or whatever, would congregate in this one ward. So the ward that was designated that for in Guatemala is the chapel that is attached to the temple. So it's like their little temple square there, okay?
Yeah.
And it was also the final stop before they headed back to the States for this guy's trip. So their last stop was to go to sacrament meeting at that ward, and then they got on a plane and went home. So I got to meet this guy several times. I remember I had a book that he had written, and he signed it. And I just thought, I was hook, line, and sinker. If there was a pillar to my testimony, it was that I lived in the lands of the Lamanites. And to sort of solidify that even more, my first mission president, who I had for only 2 or 3 transfers, was an amateur Book of Mormon archaeologist who also bought into the Mesoamerican model and who had a book manuscript that he intended on publishing after his mission, which I don't believe he ever did. But we all received a copy of this manuscript, this rough draft of a book that basically proved that where I lived was where the Book of Mormon happened. And I look back on it now, and he was a good guy, and I try not to think ill of him truly, but he told some stories that now, knowing what I know now, are impossible to be true. He had to have made them up. And I struggle to reconcile that to this day.
That was the first Mexican president in Spain.
Yeah, 2 or 3 transfers. So the bulk of my mission was with a guy named Shane Bowen, who is now in the First Quorum of the 70.
Wow. Listen to this. It's amazing you have come out, just because those experiences, I mean, I just can't believe that you were able to somehow tease that apart from reality.
I wasn't the guy that you would look at and say, there's a future bishop. I was never that guy, but I went to church every Sunday. You know, I mean, I suppose I had my flaws just like everybody else, but I had, you know, people talk about the shelf this, shelf that. I mean, I can look back and think of maybe 1 or 2 things that now in hindsight were shelf items, but I did not have a shelf when I was a member.
Wow.
I was completely unaware that problematic history even existed. I believed that there were no not only did I believe there were no contradictions, I didn't even know the accusation of contradictions even existed, right? The only ex-Mormons that I knew were lazy, inactive people. I'm sure I knew people that had left the church, but they didn't tell me, so I didn't know. I didn't know there was this whole thing of, you know, I'll tell you a little funny story. I'm on my mission in Spain. I'm in this small podunk town by Spanish standards. Middle of nowhere by Spanish standards, okay? People don't there. First of all, you go to a big city like Barcelona, which I served also there. I mean, people heard of Mormons and stuff, and there's more Mormons in Barcelona, but there's still not a lot of Mormons there. But you go to a small town, and there's no Mormons. We had like 5 people at church every Sunday, okay? So one day, my companion and I were going, and we stumble across this like flea market type of a scene. And you know, we're just walking around, whatever. And I remember we stopped at this one place that had all these like old books, which I love old books, you know, and I'm looking at these books. And the guy who's selling these old books says, "Oh, you guys are Mormons." Yeah, we're Mormons. We were just ecstatic that he even knew who we were.
Yeah.
This was unexpected. And he says, "Oh yeah, I know about you guys. You guys," he says something to the effect of, "Yeah, you guys were secretly distilling whiskey up in the mountains of Utah, weren't you?" And I'm like, my companion and I both looked at each other and we were like, who is this crazy dude? And where did he hear that crazy story? And we just like walked away and laughed it off about how, where do these anti-Mormons love? And then later I find out, years and years later, that Brigham Young distilled whiskey. And I said, I remember that when I found this out, I said to my wife, I said, this nobody in the middle of nowhere in Spain knew more about my religion than I did, in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
It blew me away.
Wow.
To remember that and to like, wow, you know.
It's funny how those stories stick with you and come back to you.
Yeah, I always remembered it as a humorous thing.
Yeah.
You know, it was like horns on the head humorous.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
High school, you must have been academically inclined.
Whew. You would think so now with when I told you I have a master's degree. You know, I didn't like school.
Okay.
So I don't know, you know, I'd like to think it was because I was too bored with the material. And maybe, you know, but that might be some revisionist history on my part. I don't know. But
sports, girls, band?
Sports. That was my thing. Yeah.
Yeah. What
I
was
played
it?
every sport I
Did
could.
you?
I mean, we didn't have football. But I went to BYU football camp in the summers.
Wow.
But I played mainly basketball, soccer, volleyball, baseball when I could, but my schools didn't have baseball. But I played on some, in Honduras, I played on a local sort of what would be equivalent to a little league team, if you will. But loved sports. That was my focus.
Got it.
Yep.
So you get called to Spain.
Barcelona,
what a city. I've never been there, but
beautiful
my family
place.
loves it.
I'll tell you, there's a little story before that.
Yeah, tell it.
So I graduated from high school in Guatemala, and my parents were at the end of their time in Guatemala, and they were moving to Peru. And so the plan is I'm moving to Las Vegas, stay with family, work, save up for my mission, right? This is in the days of going at 19. And so that's the plan, right? My parents go to Peru, I go to Las Vegas. And, you know, I didn't have a lack of testimony, But I didn't have like, I knew the church is true just because I knew it my entire life. Yeah. And even though I had had all of those powerful sort of, Lamanite, lands of the Lamanite moments, it wasn't the type of thing where, for me, it was a given.
Yeah.
Right? I never had this like powerful spiritual experience where I said, I believe in the Book of Mormon. But I believed in the Book of Mormon. So I wasn't not wanting to go on a mission, but at the same time, I wasn't like doing cartwheels over the prospect. I wasn't enrolled in school, but I kind of thought I want to go to school and, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I ended up, okay, I'm going to go. And in order to I didn't do any of the paperwork stuff that I was supposed to have been doing, the doctor visit and all that stuff. So I ended up, and we were getting close to my 19th birthday. So I ended up going to Peru and staying with my parents and taking care of all the paperwork there. And my papers were submitted as if I was from the United States. I don't know how they did it. I wasn't submitting it from Peru, but I was in Peru when it all happened. So anyway, so I'm there. I'm planning on being there for 2 or 3 months because, back then, it was a whole process. Yeah. It wasn't all an email. It was like, not only do you have to go get the doctor's visits, when you finally send the paperwork in, you got to wait like 6 weeks, 2 months, who knows, So I'm going to be there for a couple months. And in our ward there was one of the mission presidents for I don't remember which mission it was, one of the Lima, Peru missions. And he comes up to me one Sunday, he says, hey, I hear you're working on your papers and, going to be waiting for you. I said, yeah. He goes, well, we have a need for a missionary right now. How would you like to, and he called it a mini mission. I don't know if that's an official term or not. He said, how would you like to serve a mini mission? 6 weeks. I said, well, I got nothing else to do. Sure, why not? And I loved hanging out with the missionaries, And I was set apart as a missionary.
Wow.
Got a plaque. I came into the mission office with a new group out of the MTC, orientation, sent out in the sticks. I lived a comfortable life down in these countries. We lived in like the rich neighborhoods or whatever. I'm out where they got dirt floors and no toilet seats. Wow. It's like the toilet seat is perpetually up, no matter which number you're doing. And, we had electric shower heads for hopefully hot water type of thing. And I was a little hesitant, but, at the same time, I don't know if I was pressured into doing it, but it was like I had nothing else to do, And the very first night, this is where my conversion happens. True conversion. The very first day I was there, my companion picks me up. We go, hey, we've got an appointment tonight with such and such family, and we're inviting them to be baptized tonight. And I spoke Spanish, but not the way I do now. Even though I lived in those countries, I was somewhat sheltered from the language. So I spoke it, but I couldn't carry on conversations about missionary lessons. I wasn't trained in that. So I'm just kind of sitting there, and the message was so powerful, and the Spirit, what we as Mormons would recognize as the Spirit, was so strong. It was palpable. And the responses from the father of the family was so powerful. And of course, he committed to being baptized. And I walked away and I said, wow, this is a mission. I never had experience like that in my life. And from that day forward, I was excited for my mission.
Wow.
Pumped up for my mission.
Would you consider that a spiritual regeneration? Or?
I think I probably had spiritual experiences before that, maybe like at EFY. I went to EFY every summer. But I would say it was the first, or I would say it was the most powerful by far spiritual experience I had at that point, where I could specifically identify something, and say I felt the Spirit in that house.
Knowing nothing about you and what you've done since, except I just have guesses, which are probably close to being right, but do you think that family that converted on your 6-week mini mission, that was a good thing for them in their life?
Well, shoot, that's something I haven't even thought about. That's a good question. Of course, at the time I did. How
about now, looking backward? Knowing what you know, but also balancing it out with, there's a good social
Well,
system.
I don't remember enough about them to know if they needed that kind of structure in their
see.
life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's possible. But I would just say, broadly speaking, that anybody that I had a part in bringing to the church, I do feel some regret over.
Oh, okay.
Broadly speaking.
Yeah. That makes sense. So, Spain, were you excited about that?
Yeah.
So you weren't fluent, and Spain is a
Well,
different
I kind of
Spanish.
was. It's weird. It's weird. I didn't take language training in the MTC. I knew enough Spanish. They tested me. I knew enough Spanish to skip the language part in the MTC.
Jeez.
So, look, I knew Spanish. I understood everything. And when forced, I could put sentences together. But I had never been forced to speak Spanish.
Oh, okay.
I went to private schools that were all in English, American curriculum. And so all I ever had to do in Spanish was order a burger at McDonald's and get by in Sunday school at church.
Got it.
Okay? And what happened was, as soon as I was in a situation in Peru, and then it exacerbated in Spain, where I had no choice but to speak Spanish, it came like that.
Oh, okay.
It was almost as if I'd always spoken it. Now that's it's hard to relate to because I don't think a lot of people go through that experience. So did I know Spanish? Yes, I knew Spanish. Did I go into my mission fluent the way I'm fluent now? No, but I knew Spanish.
Did you like the mission?
I loved my mission.
Yeah, I did. I love mine too.
I had a great mission.
Yeah. It's fraternal though. You're a sport guy.
Yeah, maybe that's
military.
it.
It's
It's
all
I can
of
see that. Look, I had a great mission president. I had great companions. I can only think of one companion where we had sort of personality conflicts, and he was only my companion for one transfer. So by and large, I had great friendships with my companions. The people of Spain are awesome. We didn't convert very many people. They're not interested, but they're nice as can be, and I love the Spanish culture, as can be witnessed by my tattoo here.
Oh, very nice.
My wife is from Spain.
Oh, okay.
She was actually a missionary in our mission.
Whoa, we got to get to this.
So she was from Spain, and then from a different area, and served in the Barcelona mission.
Oh, nice.
And but look, I had probably the one other. I've had 3 major spiritual experiences while I was a Mormon that I would categorize as pillar things that I would, let's say, repeat when I was giving a testimony. As being, this is why I know the church is true. One I've already told you. Another one happened on my mission on my mission in Spain. I was still pretty fresh, but maybe 2 months in the mission. I get transferred to this brand new area, and my companion had only been there for one transfer prior to me, so didn't know the area very well. And we had an appointment, it was either the first or second day that I was there, with a family that they had been teaching, but he had always just kind of followed his companion there, and he couldn't quite remember how to get there on his own. Yeah. And we got lost. And this is all part of the miracle of the story, by the way, getting lost, because obviously God had a plan in our minds. Well, later, hindsight. Well, we're getting lost. We're looking frantically for this street, and we had this big map that we would pull out of our bag. This is for all the kids out there. Yeah. Okay, this is before
GPS.
No GPS. At least not affordable. Yeah. And as we're walking, we walk by this outdoor cafe, and we hear somebody yell at us, "Hey, Mormons!" in Spanish. Hey, Mormons! Which again, remember, in Spain, that's rare. Somebody even. So we're oh, well, what is this? So this guy comes running down. He was eating with his wife. He comes running. He goes, "Are you guys Mormons?" He goes, "Do you have that picture of Jesus in that book? Let me see the book. Let me see the book." So we pull out our Book of Mormon, and that it's that classic red-vested Jesus picture that's in those Book of Mormons. Yeah. Okay? And he's like, "That's the picture." He's like, "I want one of these books. This is the best picture of Jesus I've ever seen." And so my companion, being very savvy, instead of giving him one of the 5 books we had with us, says, "Well, we could drop one off at your house tomorrow." Okay? Ooh. So he goes, "Great, here's where I live, how much is it going to, don't worry, it's for free, So we find our place, we go about it, we're like, well, wow, maybe that's why we got lost. Yeah. So we go meet this guy. lives in this, by the standards of this town, in an extremely high wealth area. Very nice apartment, luxury. We find out later his wife is like a local politician and he's a house husband or whatever you want to call it. No kids. And he sits at home, has art projects that he's doing, sculptures, and just messes around. He's about 50-ish, okay? So we go in and we teach him the first discussion, sort of force it on him because he's not really interested, and he keeps telling us he's not interested. He just wants the picture. He starts to tell us, look, hey, I'm Catholic, and not only that, I was a Buddhist monk, or not a Buddhist monk, a Catholic monk, or whatever it is. In Spanish, it's monk. Do they say that in English? It's monje in Spanish. I don't know what the English version of that is. But he basically had committed his life to being this Catholic, and then he ended up leaving. He didn't tell us why at the time, but he's still devoted Catholic, has no interest in anything we're telling him. He just wants the book. So my companion says, here's the book. You can have the book. My companion says, we've got a larger poster of this same picture in our apartment. If you want, we'll give it to you. So he drives us back to our apartment, and we give him that. He's super grateful, but doesn't want to meet with us again. He says, no, I don't, we're trying to set up the next appointment. No. And we're just crestfallen because it's like, this guy calls us out. It was like so miraculous. And it turns out he really did just want the book, So we get a call a couple days later. Elders, you need to come see me. Okay. So we go see him. And by the way, people are going to think I'm exaggerating this story. I am not exaggerating this story. This is exactly what happened. We go in there, and he starts to say to us, I was a Catholic, I went and signed up at the monastery, whatever it was called, and I'm like dedicating my life to Catholicism, and I'm on this path, and I'm being trained, and I'm being taught in the ways of the Catholic Church, and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I keep getting into theological arguments with my superiors, whoever these people are. And it's getting more intense and more intense. And I don't remember what the specific issues were, but he probably told us. It led to the thing of him needing to leave. The disagreements got to such degree that he had to abandon his dream of being a Catholic monk or whatever it was. And he says, I've always had this thing with Catholicism ever since. I love Catholicism, but I've always felt it was just missing something. And he goes, I've read this entire book, and everything that Catholicism is missing is in this book. We're like companion and I, we look at each other, we're like, is this real life? I mean, think about this. In Spain, this does not happen.
Yeah, that's big.
And so we're like, wow, and like, well, come to church with us. Well, he's like, I don't even go to the Catholic church. I'm not going to church with you. I love this book. And he starts talking about the book in theological terms, like it's like totally above our heads. Like this guy was a super smart guy. And so anyway, we start, he's like, you guys, we teach the lessons, and at one point, we start talking to him about tobacco, because he's a big smoker, like a lot of people in Spain. And this guy, not only did he smoke, but he rolled his own cigarettes with the highest quality. He would tell us, he's like, this is the highest quality tobacco you can find, And
you
no
are
filter.
A very good storyteller. The highest quality tobacco you can find.
I remember, I can picture it like today, where he was like just babying this little cigarette, like it was like this delicate work of art, And he's like, so we start talking about how we don't believe in smoking, and the whole word of wisdom thing. And he goes, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "I love smoking. I've been smoking since I was 13 years old, and this stuff, I don't care what the doctors say, it's good for you. It breathes life into me." And I remember him being so proud of not using a filter or anything. Okay. We go back next visit. He goes, well, the reality is I do wish I could quit smoking, but I am addicted. And I've tried to quit, and I've tried all of the tricks, and I've never been able to do it. He's like, so it really doesn't matter what you guys say. I have to accept. I'm 50 years old. I've been smoking since I'm 13. It's just who I am. Okay. Next visit. I'm not like this literally happened like this. Succession. Next visit. Help me quit smoking. What can I do? I need to quit smoking. So anyway, we eventually get to this plan. By the way, at some point during this time, we got him to come to church with us, and he hated it. He's like, these people are, I remember him saying, these people are idiots. They don't understand anything. You know, he was this weird guy. Just a very eccentric, and he was on a different level than we were. And so anyway, so we devised this plan. In Spain and many European countries, it's very common to go on vacation all at once for like a whole month. And usually that's the month of August. And his wife being a politician, it was just pretty much a given. The month of August, she was at home. And so the timing was perfect, and we said, okay, we're gonna fast. We taught him about fasting. He was intrigued by the idea. We're gonna fast. You're gonna come to church with us even though you don't like it. We're gonna fast on Saturday night. Come to church. We'll come back to your apartment. We'll give you a blessing. We'll break the fast. And you're gonna go cold turkey, and your wife's gonna be here with you. So we fast. Come back. Now, keep in mind, I'm in the mission. This is August time, maybe beginning of August. I got to Spain, I think, in May. So I've only been in the country for a couple months. And he says he wants me to give him the blessing. And it was, Shawn, it was one of those things where the Spirit was in the room. It was there. It was powerful. The words, it was one of those things, I didn't even remember what I said in the blessing. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house. And it wasn't because of me. It was because we were all moved. We broke the fast. We would check up on him a couple times a week. He was sick in bed from the withdrawal symptoms. This is a guy that chain smoked from the time he was 13 to 50. And he was going cold turkey. Remember, he was throwing up, his wife would call us, he's not doing good today, and he can't get out of bed. And we would just like words of encouragement and all this stuff. But we kind of stayed away. Like we would just check in on him, but we were letting him sort of detox, if you will. And we went and visited him. I don't remember how much time elapsed, but he had overcome the withdrawal, and he was like a new person. He never got baptized. And for all I know, he started smoking again. I don't even know.
Sure.
But that experience was such a powerful moment for me on my mission. I truly believe that I was placed at the time, that I was placed in his path to help him stop smoking, if nothing else.
I love it.
If nothing else.
It's a fantastic story.
Yeah.
Third one.
Well, third one was a number of years later. I was married, kids, whatever. I was starting to go back to school, which I went a little bit later than what would be traditional. We were struggling financial. This is in the throes of the recession. And we were hit, my family was hit very hard by the recession. For the very first time ever, I found myself in a situation where I might have to go and ask the bishop for help on the rent. And I did not want to do that. That was just, I was not the guy that asked for help on the rent. And I don't know if I had set the appointment or I was about to set the appointment. And totally unexpected, check came in the mail for about $1,800, which covered the rent and then some. And no doubt in my mind at the time, even though the letter clearly said that there had been an accounting error at the university and that we had overpaid this, blah blah blah. It was, and it had affected in fact, it was in the paper. Because it had affected thousands of people in Las Vegas. And a bunch of people got these checks from the university because of this accounting error that occurred.
Yeah.
But that, went in one ear and out the other. This was a blessing of tithing, no doubt. I shared that experience in several subsequent testimonies.
So you got back from this. Did you do any school before the mission?
My mission, no.
Okay, you got back, and where'd you go?
Well, I went initially to my parents in Virginia.
Okay.
Spent the summer there in the going back in the CIA's training facility, and I was working there as an escort to. There was a bunch of construction going on, and I had to escort. I had to be with the construction workers all the time. They had to go to the bathroom. I had to take them to the bathroom. They could only go in certain places. Yeah.
It's probably well paying though.
No.
No?
I think it was minimum wage or close to it.
Whoa.
It was a job that was reserved for the family members of people like my dad who were teaching, so to give us something to do. So a lot of it was the wives of people that worked there, and then people like me that were either there for the summer, or maybe they were home from school for the summer type of thing. Teenage, so yeah.
So undergraduate?
So after that, I went. Initially, the plan was to go to BYU, Idaho. It had just become BYU, Idaho, and I enrolled and went up there a semester before my enrollment semester was, and to get settled in and whatnot. And during that time, I got engaged to be married, and I didn't like it up there, and I didn't feel like my wife and I would be able to have any kind of quality of life at all there because of the job situation was just horrible. And I remember I made like a little bit above minimum wage, and I was the highest paid person I knew. Wow. And in Rexburg, there's just not jobs for 21-year-olds. Yeah. So I moved to Las Vegas with the long-term intention of becoming a police officer. Okay. Which never happened, but actually my long-term goal since I was a kid was to work for the FBI. And I did make it eventually to the final interview, but I didn't make it past that.
Wow.
But anyway, the part of that path was going to be a stop at the police department, which that also never happened. But moved to Las Vegas and just got married and started the typical Mormon young married life.
Wow.
A couple of dead end. Oh yeah, Las Vegas temple.
First time through the temple.
I went for the first time in Peru.
Blown away?
I enjoyed it. I liked it. I didn't get the creepy vibe,
Did you have the signs and everything that we had when I?
No, I was after that. Okay. I actually had a translating machine because I was in Peru, so I was in Spanish. And even though I knew Spanish, it's good to hear that in your own native language. So I had one of those, just like a Hispanic person would do here in Spanish. I was doing that in English. And I remember I had never took a temple prep class, first of all. And I had never been to the temple. I never did baptisms for the dead. I'm moving around so much and just never had the opportunity. So I had never stepped foot inside a temple, and I was never told what to expect. I didn't know there was a movie. I didn't know there were clothes. I didn't know anything. Wow. I'm naked under a poncho, and I'm like, nobody told me this was gonna happen.
That's a great book title, by the way.
Yeah. Naked under a poncho. All right, I might use that one day. So, we go into the movie, and you're watching the movie, and I'm like, okay, I'm taking this in. I'm like, wow, this is deep. Wow. Deep. And then, we move into the celestial room or whatever, right? The thing you do at the end. And I remember sitting there and just like total peace, and you know how you feel in there, right? So for those that haven't been, it really is. Yeah. For a meditative space, it is. Sure. Is there anything better? I don't know.
Beautiful.
Quiet. Beautiful, quiet. Clean, like white glove clean. Yeah. And I remember just sitting there, thinking that we were waiting. Now at this point, I'm into it. 3 hours now? At this point, 2.5, 3 hours, and I'm thinking, oh, they're going to take us somewhere else. Like I thought we were waiting for somebody to come and say, okay. I didn't want it to end. I thought we were, And I remember at some point, my dad said, hey, no rush, but whenever you're ready to go, we'll go. And I was like, oh, it's over? I was ready for more.
That's really funny.
Yeah. Now, as interesting as that is, I was never an avid temple attender.
Just because of indifference?
No, I think I was busy.
Oh, okay.
I had, kids young. Especially when I started going to school and I'm working 3 jobs. So it just, and you know how they say when the temple's so close to you, it's almost the hardest to go. Yeah. And I think that was maybe, we were in Las Vegas, we got a temple right down the street. I mean, I would probably go once a year. Okay. I did a couple of baptism runs with the youth. Yeah. That kind of stuff. But I was never the monthly or weekly attender. Got it. But not because I didn't want to be. It was just didn't have time.
So young married man, you have, how many children do you have now?
4.
So you started having children.
Yeah.
Were you with the youth in the ward? Your callings?
Eventually.
Whether your
early
callings
on, it was, so my first calling when we were married was a joint calling with my wife in the primary.
Oh, okay.
Spent 2 years in the primary. I don't do well with other people's kids. I love my kids, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I just don't have the patience.
Yeah.
But they were all good kids, and the funny thing is they're all starting to become adults now, and it's interesting to watch them.
Yeah.
And I know some of them have left the church.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But and some of them haven't. I also know that too. Yeah, to primary. When we moved into the ward that we eventually were in for 8 years, which ended up being the last ward I was active in.
Okay.
Okay. I was, let's see. At one point, I was the mission leader. I was Sunday school president at some point. My favorite calling that I had for like 5 years was I was one of the on the teaching rotation for priesthood.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then the last calling that I had, which was for about a year, up to the point I left the church and moved. I happened to move and leave the church at the same time, which was just a coincidence, by the way. I was first counselor in the young men's presidency.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So your children, 4 children's age range?
My oldest is 14.
Okay. Girl or boy?
Girl. Girl 14. Girl who is about to turn 11 this month. And then 2 boys, 7 and 6. They're 15 months apart.
Wow. So you're active. You're in your callings. You've gotten you getting your master's during this time?
I started going to school in 2008 with a bachelor's.
Okay.
I finished my master's in 2014.
Wow.
So from 2008 to 2014, I was in school. But during my master's, I was working as a regulatory auditor for the state of Nevada.
Got it.
While getting my master's.
And to our audience, a regulatory auditor for the state of Nevada means?
Well, I mean, I'm the guy that you don't want coming and knocking on your door.
Yeah, wow.
The first agency I worked for was the Department of Taxation, which is the state's version of the IRS. And our main focus, we had various focuses, our main focus was sales tax and use tax. And those that are watching that own businesses know what I'm talking about. So, we'd go knock down doors, and not literally, but, we'd make sure people were remitting properly. And if they weren't, we would be the bearer of bad news. I was well known in the office as the guy to deliver the bad news to people. I was often called upon on some of the tougher cases.
Wow.
Because I had this ability, and I was a member, by the way, at the time, not that it really matters, but I had this ability to remove my emotions from the situation. And even if I felt I often would feel for the people. Sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I was just like, you guys are tax cheats. But sometimes I felt like, hey, it was an honest mistake that snowballed, and now you got this $100,000 bill that's going to ruin your life. Well, what can I do about it? And I had this ability to, even if I felt sorry for them, to remove the emotion and deliver the message in a professional and courteous manner.
Wow.
I always had the goal, when I would go into an audit company, when I was with the taxation, my goal was to go into an audit, and I would tell the people this goal in the beginning. I would say, no matter what happens at the end of this audit, you're probably going to owe money, because in almost everybody makes mistakes. Okay? So you're going to owe something. Get ready for it. But my goal is that when we're all done, no matter how much you owe, you're going to say thank you. And I almost always got that.
Wow.
Even with big bills, they would say thank you. Because I would try to educate them while chastising them, and this is where you went wrong, and this is how you could maybe avoid this. I tried to be like that, and it was fun for me, And I went from there to, I stayed with the state. In fact, I just moved upstairs, in the building. I went to an agency called the Nevada Gaming Control Board, and I was an agent with them, and I worked in their audit division. And basically, the Nevada Gaming Control Board polices the casinos in Nevada. And my division, the audit division, specifically was tasked with monitoring and enforcing what are called internal controls. So that would be like, it could be minutia, and it could also be broad strokes. But like the minutia would be, when you're doing X, when your activity, you have to have somebody standing here and somebody standing here. And we would go in secret and watch and make sure they were doing stuff like that. this signature has to be here with this signature. This has to be done here, and this and that. Like, there were literally, like, when they're doing markers, that's when people borrow money at the table, right? You issue a marker. They literally are rules that says the dealer has to put chips in this spot.
Wow.
And put their hand over here. And we would come and watch video and make sure they were doing stuff like that.
Wow.
So that's the internal controls. Then the other thing was their financial reporting. We would make sure that they were reporting the right amount of gaming tax, which is what fuels the state of Nevada. If people have heard that the state of Nevada has no income tax, and how do they do it? It's because of the gaming tax, and they get so much money from it, and we are protecting that.
It sounds like, Ryan, we'll wrap up our first hour together, which has been fascinating. You're a very interesting guy and a great teller of tales, stories that I believe. But it seems to me like with your dad in the CIA, you had a desire to, your fraternal experience with sports and the mission, and then you wanted to be a cop, and then you went to the last interview of the FBI, then you became an auditor. It sounds like you're the perfect guy to catch fraud.
I am trained for that, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
And I think that makeup has certainly led to what comes next in your life, which we'll cover in our next segment together.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks. We'll see you next week here on Heart of the Matter.